The year was 1929. It was a time of great change and uncertainty, a period marked by the shadows of the past and the looming specter of the future. The city was Düsseldorf, Germany. A darkness was spreading, creeping through the cobblestone streets and into the hearts of its residents. Its name was Peter Kürten, a man whose very presence seemed to cast a pall over the city. He was a monster wearing a human face, a predator hiding in plain sight. Kürten would become known as the Vampire of Düsseldorf, a name that would send shivers down the spines of those who heard it. His crimes shocked the world. He was a sadist, deriving pleasure from the pain and suffering of others. He was a sexual deviant. He was a killer. His methods were brutal, his motives twisted. His story is not for the faint of heart. It is a tale of horror and depravity. Kürten's crimes were not quick or painless. He took his time, savoring each moment of agony he inflicted. He enjoyed the suffering of his victims, relishing in their fear and torment. He was a predator in the night, a shadow that moved silently through the darkness. He stalked the streets of Düsseldorf, searching for his next victim. He searched for the perfect prey, someone who would satisfy his insatiable hunger for blood and pain. He craved blood and pain, and he would stop at nothing to get it. The city lived in fear. The police were baffled. They had no leads. Kürten was a ghost. He left no trace. Fear turned to panic. The people of Düsseldorf were desperate for answers. The people of Düsseldorf demanded answers. They wanted justice for the victims and safety for themselves. The police needed to catch this monster. They needed to put an end to his reign of terror. But how do you catch a shadow? How do you stop a man who seems to be everywhere and nowhere at once? Kürten's reign of terror would last for months. Each new crime added to the growing sense of dread. He left a trail of bodies in his wake, each one a testament to his cruelty. Each victim added to his legend. He was the boogeyman, the monster that haunted the nightmares of children and adults alike. He was the monster under the bed. He was real, and he was out there, lurking in the shadows. And he was thirsty for more blood. His hunger was never satisfied, his thirst never quenched. The first whispers of the vampire began in February 1929. The city of Düsseldorf was about to be plunged into a year of terror that would leave its citizens forever scarred. A young woman, Apollonia Kuhn, was found murdered. Her death was the beginning of a series of gruesome killings that would haunt the city. Her body was a canvas of brutality. The sheer savagery of the attack shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Multiple stab wounds marked her torso. Each wound told a story of unimaginable pain and suffering. The police suspected a sexual motive. They combed through every piece of evidence, hoping to find a clue that would lead them to the killer. But they had no suspect. Then the killing stopped. Months passed. The city began to hope that the nightmare was over. The city breathed a sigh of relief. Life slowly returned to normal, and the fear that had gripped Düsseldorf began to fade. But the monster was just getting started. The calm was merely the eye of the storm. In August, Kürten returned with a vengeance. His bloodlust had not been sated, and he was more determined than ever to spread fear. This time, his victims were children. The innocence of youth was no shield against his cruelty. Their names were Rosa Oliger and Walter Schwartz. Their deaths sent shockwaves through the community. They were found dead near a railway embankment. The location added to the horror, a place once associated with travel and adventure, now tainted by death. Their throats had been cut. Panic gripped Düsseldorf. The city was once again plunged into fear. The murders were too gruesome, too random. No one felt safe, and the sense of dread was palpable. Who could do such a thing? The police worked tirelessly. They followed every lead, every whisper, but the killer remained elusive. But Kürten was always one step ahead. His cunning and ruthlessness made him a ghost, a phantom that the police could not catch. As 1929 drew to a close, the body count rose. Each new victim added to the city's collective trauma. Maria Hahn, a young housemaid, was found stabbed to death. Her murder was another dark chapter in the city's year of terror. Then came Ida Reuter, her skull crushed. The brutality of her death was almost beyond comprehension. Each murder was more brutal than the last. The killer's methods grew more savage, more depraved. The city held its breath. Who would be next? The fear was omnipresent, a dark cloud that hung over Düsseldorf as the vampire continued his reign of terror. Kürten's reign of terror continued into 1930. He seemed unstoppable. His victims were young and old, male and female. He attacked in broad daylight and in the dead of night. He was a predator without a pattern, or so it seemed. One February night, he struck again. His victim was Rudolf Scheller, a mechanic. Scheller was found dead in a park. He had been stabbed over 20 times. The brutality of the attack shocked even the most hardened police officers. Next was August Scharf, a young woman who had been strangled. Her body was found near the Rhine River. The police found a strange clue, a handkerchief with the initial K. Could this be the breakthrough they needed? The murders continued. Gertrude Hammacher, a 5-year-old girl, vanished without a trace. Her body was found days later, sexually assaulted and strangled. The city was in an uproar. The police were under immense pressure to catch the monster in their midst. Kürten's crimes were not just about murder. They were about power and control. He enjoyed inflicting pain. He reveled in the terror of his victims. He was a sadist of the highest order. But there was something else that set Kürten apart from other killers. He had a peculiar and disturbing fetish. He was drawn to blood, not just the sight of it. He craved the taste of it. He would often drink the blood of his victims. He was a real-life vampire. This bloodlust, this macabre thirst, baffled the police. They had never encountered anything like it. It spoke to a level of depravity that was hard to comprehend. Was this monster even human? News of the blood drinking spread through Düsseldorf like wildfire. The legend of the vampire of Düsseldorf was born. The city lived in fear of the monster in their midst. Section 5. Cornered. The letter and the confession. As the body count grew, so did the pressure on the police. The city of Düsseldorf was gripped with fear, and the authorities were under immense scrutiny. They were desperate for a break. Every lead seemed to go cold, and the public's trust in the police was waning. And then, it came from an unexpected source, a glimmer of hope in the form of a young woman. In May 1930, a young woman named Maria Budlik came forward. Her courage would change the course of the investigation. She told a chilling tale. Maria had been attacked by a man whose description matched the elusive suspect. She managed to escape her assailant. Her quick thinking and bravery were remarkable. He had led her to the outskirts of town, a place where no one could hear her screams. But he got spooked and fled. Perhaps he sensed that his time was running out. Before leaving, he forced her to write a letter, a strange and twisted demand. He mailed it to himself. This bizarre act would be his undoing. The police saw an opportunity. They knew this could be the break they desperately needed. The letter was a long shot. It was a gamble, but they had no other leads. But it was all they had. The stakes were high, and failure was not an option. They staked out the post office. Days turned into weeks. The waiting was excruciating. Finally, a man came to claim the letter. He matched Maria's description. The police moved in swiftly. The man was Peter Kürten. Kürten confessed to everything. His capture was a turning point. He described his crimes in gruesome detail. He showed no remorse. His cold demeanor was chilling. In fact, he seemed to relish in the telling. His enjoyment of recounting his heinous acts was disturbing. His confession sent shockwaves through Düsseldorf. The city was in disbelief, grappling with the horror of his revelations. Section 6. The Trial of the Century. No remorse, no mercy. The trial of Peter Kürten was a media sensation. Reporters from around the world descended upon Düsseldorf. Everyone wanted to know more about the vampire of Düsseldorf. The courtroom was packed. Kürten seemed to enjoy the attention. He held court from the defendant's table. He recounted his crimes with a chilling detachment. He showed no remorse for his victims. He was a monster in human form. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence. The defense argued that Kürten was insane. They claimed he was not responsible for his actions, but the jury was unconvinced. After a 7-day trial, Kürten was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to death. Section 7. The vampire meets the guillotine. Justice served? On July 2, 1931, Peter Kürten was executed by guillotine. He faced his death with the same chilling calmness he had displayed throughout his trial. He showed no fear. He had no last words. The execution of Peter Kürten brought an end to his reign of terror, but it did not erase the horror he had inflicted upon Düsseldorf. The city would forever be haunted by the memory of the vampire of Düsseldorf. Section 8. The Vampire's Shadow. Düsseldorf's dark legacy. Even today, decades after his death, Peter Kürten's crimes continue to fascinate and horrify. He remains one of the most notorious serial killers in history. His case had a profound impact on Düsseldorf. It forever changed the way the city viewed itself. The vampire of Düsseldorf became a part of the city's folklore. His story was passed down through generations. It served as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary-seeming places. Section 9. Inside the Mind of a Monster. What drove Peter Kürten to commit such horrific acts? It's a question that has haunted criminologists and psychologists for years. Some believe he was born evil. Others point to his troubled childhood and history of animal abuse. Kürten's own confessions offered little insight into his motivations. He claimed he was driven by an insatiable lust for blood. He enjoyed inflicting pain. He felt no remorse. He was a monster in human form. Section 10. Lessons from the Abyss. Serial killers and society. The case of Peter Kürten, the vampire of Düsseldorf, serves as a stark reminder that monsters do exist. They walk among us, they blend in, and they are capable of unspeakable evil. Kürten's crimes shocked the world. They forced us to confront the dark side of human nature. They taught us that evil can take many forms, and it can strike anywhere, at any time.